Burgess.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Gavin, the current state of the economy, and we look at this recession and compare it to the previous recessions and the recovery, and I apologize for not having the graphic here, but everyone understands that the recovery has been slower and much more prolonged than other recessions, certainly that have occurred during my lifetime and years just preceding that. Can you give us some reasons why the recovery has been so painfully slow in occurring?
Well, I don't know that I have the reasons, but I certainly can confirm that as compared, say, to the recessions in 1975 and 82, job recovery in this recession is much slower. And as compared to the recessions of 1991 and 2003, or that ended in 1991 and 2003, job recovery after this recession is somewhat slower.
Well, I did take the liberty of preparing some economic data, and I realize that's not my forte. Mm-hmm. And at the risk of relating to things that are not related, I decided to plot the unemployment rate for the last 10 years. And I put on the graph also, since it's been the subject of some national discussion, the minimum wage increases that have recently occurred. And you can see there that there does appear to be a parallel. Now, I realize there's a risk in relating to things that may not be related, but do you have a comment on the association of those two lines on the graph?
Yeah, we don't engage in that sort of policy analysis. We don't want to do anything to undermine your trust in our objectivity and fairness.
The reality is, though, that this change in the unemployment rate, when I referenced in my opening statement, there's some things that the administration has done, but there's other things that the Congress has done. There's some things that the Congress did during the last administration when Speaker Pelosi took over as Speaker of the House. And this was one of those things. Now, it's relevant because it also, people are discussing maybe we should just index the minimum wage to inflation. And what I see in looking at this is a period of relative stability while the minimum wage stayed at $5.15 an hour. Perhaps we're achieving a new equilibrium up at the other end of the graph. And if you index the minimum wage to inflation, would it likely have this disruptive effect that perhaps occurred during the 2007, 2008, 2009, and 2010?
Again, I really can't comment on policy questions like that.
Let me ask you this. Did the size of the labor force change this past month?
It did.
The civilian labor force?
Yes. Well, after adjustment for the population controls, it was up 250,000. That's a small change.
But another way of looking at it, those not in the labor force increased from 86.7 million to 87.9 million. Is that an accurate reflection?
There's an issue with this month's numbers. As was mentioned in the testimony, we incorporated new population estimates that are based on the Census 2010, which makes the difference between December and January not strictly comparable. Essentially, those new population controls showed that there were more people who are over the age of 55 and more people who are between the ages of 16 to 24, groups that are less likely to be in the labor force than the general population. So you have what looks like a big bump up in the number of people not in the labor force. If you adjust for that population control, it's actually down by 75,000, the size of the population that's not in the labor force.
This may fall into that broad category of lies, darn lies, and statistics, but still 1.2 million people lost from the labor force. I mean, that's a big chunk of folks. And yeah, okay, we massage the numbers and we make it look not so bad, but you just have to worry if we are losing people from the labor force at that rate. Yeah, you can make your numbers look better as far as the unemployment rate if your goalpost is November 2012, but what people are feeling out in the country, what people are experiencing out in the country, and this is what I encounter when I go home, people say, don't talk to me about the economic recovery, because even in Texas, we're not feeling it. And I rather suspect that if I was visiting California or Ohio or Michigan, I would hear those same sentiments, perhaps even a little more strongly. Let me Let me just ask you, in the time I have remaining, the fact that there are fewer payroll jobs than there were pre-recession, and this month you gained 200,000. So coming back at a rate of 200,000 a month, say this month is the new normal, this is the new benchmark, every month is going to be just like this month going forward. When do we get back to the pre-recession level?
It would take 23 more months of growth at this month's pace, 243,000 per month, to regain all those jobs.
And if the number drifted down from that, obviously the length of time is going to extend. What do you look to? Well, let me ask you this: you referenced in your figures the mining. Is that the oil and gas development that occurs also?
Mm-hmm.
So we did see some positive reflection there. Is that correct?
Correct.
Even with the price of natural gas being fairly low, price of oil has maintained a high level. But the overall outlook for that sector, is it something that's positive or negative?
Well, we avoid forecasting, but mining has been growing recently due to oil support activities for oil and gas mining.
And again, I would just reemphasize the administration could go a long way toward the economic recovery of this country, producing American jobs and American energy, and I think your data today supports that. Mr. Chairman, I cannot see the clock, so I have no earthly idea whether I'm yielding back time or whether I've run over. If I've run over,
about 2 minutes over.
I appreciate your indulgence, and I'll yield back whatever time remains. We might in the future try to have the clock where it's visible.
I agree. Just one